Welcome to the Modernize or Die podcast, CFML News Edition, where we keep you up to date with everything going on in the ColdFusion community. We'll share the latest news on events, releases to engines, frameworks, libraries, and tools, as well as spotlighting quality content from the community. Welcome to the Modernize or Die podcast. It's November 8th. 2022, episode 171. I'm Gavin Pickin, Senior Developer at Ortus Solutions, and I'm joined today by Brad Wood, another Senior Developer at Ortus Solutions. Seems like we got a few of those around. But welcome, Brad. How you doing?
We just throw that title around like candy.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm doing good. I've got my espresso. Just got some fresh beans from I think a Cuban coffee company in Miami called Zaza's. Really good. You guys maybe looking for some new espresso beans to try? They do ship through the mail now.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm not a coffee drinker, but I'll take your word for it that it's good.
Well, it's a green tea, a matcha green tea latte with some espresso shots, so it's like a weird mix up.
Well, that definitely sums you up, Brad. A weird mix up.
Yeah, hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, well,
looks like the show notes are long today. We should get into this thing.
Yep. Well, at first, let's thank our sponsors, Ortus Solutions. Maybe I should have some caffeine.
Want to spank our sponsors? Wow. Can I go first?
So, thanks Ortus Solutions, the maker of ColdBox, CommandBox, ForgeBox, TestBox, and all your other boxes. A few ways that you can say thanks: to like and subscribe our videos on YouTube, help Ortus reach for the stars by starring and forking our repos, and all the other repos that you use in your box dependencies. We have a little tool for that, CommandBox GitHub, which we'll post in the show notes for you. Also, you can subscribe on your podcast app and leave us a review. We really like those. We have free and paid content on CFCasts, which is releasing new content every week. And then we got some stuff on the Box Life store, and we've got the ColdBox HMVC tips and tricks book up on Gumroad. And so those are great ways that you can say thanks back to Ortus. But another way they can do it is a Patreon supporter, right, Brad?
That is correct. In fact, I think the reason our show notes are so long is actually just because of the growing list of Patreon supporters in the bottom of it.
Yep, and so you missed it last week, but I said that we're going to read out all the Patreons until the end of the year, but once the end of the year hits, we're going to actually do what the Patreon list says, and it says that certain levels are read on the podcast, others are available on the website. So starting in the year, well, the first of next year, we'll trim the list of what we actually read. But we'll still have all the Patreons in the show notes, but we just won't read everybody because we're running out of room, and that's a good thing, right?
We're running out of breath.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, for sure. So, but one of the cool things about our Patreon supporters is that we actually fund 100% of this podcast from our Patreon support. So we have 42 Patreons right now, and you can find out more at patreon.com/Ortus Solutions. And you can see we're actually 38%. I forgot to update the show notes. Let me do that right now. 38% of the way through to basically funding a ForgeBox and cloud infrastructure stuff, which is pretty cool. So all the package management stuff that Brad just talks on and on about is we're funding almost half of the hosting for that. So that's pretty neat. But yeah, another reason our show notes are very long this week is we actually have a special Patreon sponsored job announcement from tomorrow's guides. So I've seen these posts a couple times around, and they got in contact with us and they wanted to sponsor. So they're one of our newest gold sponsors, Patreon sponsor. And so they have a little job announcement. You want to read a little bit about what they'll be working with, Brad?
I can, if I can find that part of a show notes. Sorry, I was distracted looking at a different window. The guides?
Tomorrow's
guides?
Yep.
Tomorrow's guide. It's like, who's on first? Tomorrow's guides. They're a fast-paced leader in the UK care sector, catering for care seekers across 3 areas: care homes, nurseries, and home care. They're often called the TripAdvisor of the care sector. Their product team consists of 20 individuals across the UK working remotely to expand and improve their offering with regular expansions in teams year on year. They work with both ColdFusion 2021, also Node.js, React, and the Azure cloud. They also use MS SQL, MongoDB databases, and they are looking for a senior ColdFusion developer and automation testers. And they have training paths to Node.js available as well.
Yep. So they've got a couple of jobs available, like you said. Their website has more information on all of that in there. But yeah, it looks like they've got a couple of good positions there, and they have some pretty good benefits too. So got £4,000 per annum discretionary company bonus scheme. They got 25 days paid annual leave and bank holidays, 6% employer pension contribution, and then access to free perks and discounts through Perkbox. They've got long service awards, a cycle to work scheme, and they also have company and team night outs that sound pretty cool. So, yeah, so if you guys are looking, that's UK only, but they have a couple positions, and so we'll share those notes, and we'll tell you a little bit more about it in the job section too. But we will be getting a little video clip, so we'll be posting that in future episodes. But if you guys are in the area looking for a job, that sounds like a great one. So thanks very much, Tomorrow's Guides, for supporting us, and hopefully we can help you find the right person for your positions. Okay, so let's get into the next thing, news and announcements. So the first one, this is something that Pete had posted. Basically, Pete has had several people asking about the OpenSSL vulnerabilities that were patched last week. And so we'll bring up his blog post and I'll share my screen for those watching. But what do you think about this, Brad? Have you paid much attention?
Yeah, I mean, I saw the post and I saw some people asking about it, and especially since the log4shell things, another conversation was just happening today in Slack. Every time a big vulnerability comes out that's either related to Java or something like SSL, which is very ubiquitous, everyone's all asking, does this affect ColdFusion? Does this affect Lucee? So I was thankful that Pete put out this little article, just kind of answering that. Unfortunately, a lot of these have like an it depends answer, just because there's so many ways you can have a server configured. There's so many companion pieces of software you may or may not be installed. And it's hard to tell someone with 100% certainty your server isn't using library XYZ. But
Yeah.
Pete has a nice little rundown here that basically talks about where you could possibly be using it. At the top, he basically says by default you shouldn't be using OpenSSL with ColdFusion and Lucee, but then he kind of goes down and talks about all the places that it may have been added into your stack based on configuration or based on the software you're using. So definitely a very useful blog post, because people want to be able to tell management, they want to check the box and say, we're secure from this, we don't have to worry about it. And it's interesting, a similar conversation came up today in Slack in reference to
Node is vulnerable.
Oh wow.
Docker Hub Node. There's a list on the thing I'm showing. It's scrolling through it. I just scrolled through. So the 3x vulnerable.
Well,
more information.
A similar conversation was happening today in the CFML Slack, but instead of OpenSSL, it was about an Apache Commons library, and people were asking, "Are we vulnerable?" And I suggested that the person, if they needed to have an official answer, email the pcert@adobe.com, which is the security incident response team at Adobe. And interestingly enough, the pcert team from Adobe replied back to them and basically brushed them off and said, ask the Adobe support team, which I thought was kind of interesting, since, I assumed pcert would talk to the Adobe team to get the answer, but I figured that, usually this is how it works. Everybody who's not part of pcert at Adobe is terrified to speak publicly at all about anything related to security, or they'll get their knuckles whacked with a ruler.
Yep.
Yeah, they say, oh, don't talk to us, man, talk to pcert. And pcert today is telling people, I don't know, don't talk to us, talk to the ColdFusion support team. And I highly doubt ColdFusion support team is going to give them any official answer one way or another. So that's a little disappointing, but I don't know, maybe Mark DeCottigan will figure that one out. Because some people need to be able to come back to their boss and say, we need to remediate this, or we don't need to.
Yeah, because that's the thing is, like, if you're using SOC 2 and stuff, like, you've got a specific plan of how you should announce vulnerabilities and everything else, and so of course Adobe support team shouldn't say anything about it. The security team should do it the right way. But for people on our side, we need to know.
And I thought in the past, and maybe it didn't come from pcert, but I thought there had been some times where Adobe got so many questions about a particular exploit, they just came out and said, FYI, we're not known to be vulnerable to this at this time, just to have a public statement. But maybe that came from the ColdFusion support team. I'd have to look some of those up.
Yep. So again, we're not sure, but you should be fine. But it depends on how you're using OpenSSL. But I looked on a couple of my boxes, and they were not even the same version, not even close to it. So looks like we should be good there. So Next up, though, we have a little announcement. So, as Nolan put in his blog post, all those people that say you don't know how to use ColdBox, well, that excuse is no longer valid because the ColdBox Master Class, which Nolan actually helped create, is now free and freely available on CFCasts for you to take up until the end of the year. So we've got almost 7 hours of content for the ColdBox Master Class, and that's all available for you. So pages and pages and pages of great content. It's all bite-sized snips too, so like 4 or 5 minutes, so you can fit a little bit each day or whatnot, however you want to approach it. But
I like that we have it broken up into smaller chunks, so it makes it easier to digest a little bit here and there for sure.
Yeah, that's one of the CFcast series that we have out, and now it's freely available. So binge coding anybody, go check that out. And yeah, so it's I'm really excited to see more people taking it. A lot of times when we do work for some people, we just try and provide a few of these classes for free, just to get people into it and sort of the base knowledge up to the same level so we can go deeper. So I think it'd be great for a lot of people to take the opportunity these holidays coming up to learn a little bit more. So very cool. And then next up, Luis was tweeting and actually released basically a specification document by the look of it for Wirebox Delegates. You want to tell us what that means in English?
It means fancy things. Sorry, I was replying to Adam Cameron here in the chat.
No problem.
I was gonna slap that link to the
I have it right now.
Chat in Slack. You have to be logged into the Slack team for that to actually work. But there's the reference to that thread. For anyone in the chat, you might want to see that. So Wirebox delegates are sort of kind of like trying to solve the same problem traits are in other programming languages. It's something that we saw being demoed in several other languages, JVM languages, when Luis and I were at DevNexus, the big Java conference we go to in Atlanta. And so Luis got inspired and wanted to see what that would look like in ColdFusion using Wirebox. The long and short of it is, if you have, and the example Luis usually uses in some of his documentation is if you have like a computer class and it's composed with a memory class inside of it. There you go. You're scrolling past it right now, I think.
Yep.
And you would normally say, computer.get memory.get free memory or something like that. You would go through that memory class. But if you wanted to make the get free memory method just be available directly on the computer class, without writing the boilerplate of a custom function that just delegated out to the memory class, the Wirebox delegates allows you to basically use some annotations on the class where you say, hey, Wirebox, I want all of these methods, either all of them literally or some sort of pattern worth of methods from my memory class to be injected directly into my computer class, so I can call them as though they were part of the computer class, but behind the scenes, it's actually delegated out to the memory class. And it's a little bit more complicated than just moving UDF references around. And that's because in ColdFusion, when you inject a UDF into another CFC, the this scope and the variable scope inside the UDF point to the new CFC, not the old CFC. So we do some closure magic to make that happen. But anyway, it's a more advanced sort of concept, but it's fairly simple when you think about kind of the terms like the computer and the memory class. It's really just making methods from a composed class available directly on that parent class, and behind the scenes we inject some magical UDFs that delegate those out. I think you have to be a little careful anytime you do anything that has a lot of magic to it, just because this has the potential for someone looking at your code to not really be clear, like where is this method coming from? How is this defined? I don't see it. It's not coming from a super class. They would have to understand how Wirebox delegates work to realize, oh, this method is being injected automatically. But that's what the Wirebox delegates are. And like you just showed, there's a whole post that kind of goes through it.
Yeah, and that's actually, I'm glad Adam was here because Adam was talking about something about delegates and Kotlin, I think. And I mentioned, oh, it's like Luis has been working on some of that for ColdBox, and he's like, well, I'm really curious
Yeah.
how he's going to approach it. So it sounds like we got the Adam Cameron approval in this chat here, so that's good. This sounds
But
good.
yeah,
But yeah, definitely go check out that link, Adam. Give us a full report, like I know you will. But it's coming in Wirebox 7, which is the ColdBox 7 stuff. So it's
it
not.
was kind of fun. Yeah, it was kind of fun to plan this because we sort of had an internal RFC with an Ortus where we talked about like how should these work, what features should they have, what should it look like, and we kind of kicked it around for a while before Luis finally hammered out an implementation for it. So
Yeah, and,
yeah.
and that's sort of the key with a lot of this stuff is that we have, we try to look what other people are doing, throw it around, see what makes sense in ColdFusion and what doesn't, because sometimes, it doesn't apply quite the same way, and yeah, and then
Mm-hmm.
eventually Luis will get inspired and go write a bunch, and then we'll come back and sort of kick it around a bit more. So yeah, so if you got any feedback on that, let us know. But you're definitely right about the trying to be too clever. Like having all this magic in their app does make it a little tougher sometimes. So, but it does sound like a good way to use it. And I mean, if you have the method at the top, talk about injections and delegates and stuff. Hopefully, people will say, "Well, I wonder what this thing up here is doing," and figure it out. But it's pretty cool. Well, next up, looks like you've done some work with the CommandBox vNext. So now SSL certificates are going to be PFX support, right? So we can do
PFX support.
we can put the public and the private key together instead of having two separate files and two separate instances of like all the references to them.
Yeah,
So
that's something I've wanted to do for a while. I got 16 tickets already. My next version of CommandBox. And there's actually a 17th one I was working on last night. I'm in the middle of playing with now. But yeah, PFX files are pretty common. I've noticed from people coming from a Windows IIS um background, just in my experience. CommandBox always required you to have a separate it's a DER format, but a separate, public key and private key file. It's just the way it had been built. And a PFX format is actually just a key store, is really all it is, which contains typically the private, the public key.
yeah,
So that always just created more work for people who had a PFX file. They would have to go figure out some, arcane series of OpenSSL commands to be able to convert the PFX into the two different, cert files. So I wish I had done this years ago because it was only like 20 lines of code to make it so CommandBox could just read the PFX files all by themselves. But that's going to be a nice little improvement for anybody doing SSL work with CommandBox. So I'm glad I finally hammered that one out.
yep, for sure. So Adam's saying to the business of technology does support CFML does support default implementations on interfaces though,
Mm-hmm.
which is like interface-driven multiple inheritance. Yeah, that's always interesting. Like, yeah, some other languages they have a couple of different things, and that's why I always got to translate in my head. Like, what can we do here? What's different? What's the same? And so, but
Yeah, default implementations always felt a little dirty for some reason, and I think I always felt that way because it felt more like a workaround for the hole that Java had dug itself into with, a ton of core interfaces to the point where they were terrified to ever add a new method because they would break, so many implementing classes, in the new version. So that was kind of like their workaround to be able to add methods to interfaces without actually breaking anything. But then interfaces really became more like an abstract class at that point. But anyway, it's a very interesting conversation as far as the use cases for the default method implementations.
yeah, for sure. It looks like a lot of people in there chatting today. It's good. So, David's happy. He said, awesome, thanks, Brad. And said, can't wait for the Let's Encrypt CommandBox module, which we won't open that can of worms right now because I know you had the whole chicken egg with that, so we'll leave that for another day.
I was going to call it certbox. I started with Let's Encrypt CommandBox module, uh, David, and I quit because there was basically no way it was going to work. At least not for local development. There were a whole bunch of caveats. So I was like, this will be so much of a pain. But yeah, we can talk about it on Slack because
Yeah,
it sounded easy until I started working on it, and I was like, oh crap.
yeah, chicken egg. But
You can
next
call
up,
it chicken, Gavin.
everybody. So new releases and updates. So we have a few announcements for this week. So Lucee released the 539.166 stable, which is a minor bug fix release. Has a few of the bugs, and I'll share my screen for those who are watching. So it's available in a few different places, but it's uh, yeah, a couple of null pointer exceptions, possible deadlocks, int's been turned as decimals, so regression there, and add the possibility to find Boolean delegation via system.
Boot
Oh, boot.
delegation.
Sorry, I was like,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a
it's like,
really yeah, it's an OSGI thing. I don't really understand. I just know that it's a pain to deal with.
yeah. So, so that's cool that Lucy's got that new update out. It's really always weird to see
I,
those versions pop up. Those like the numbers changed. Like 539 is still the same, but the number after it changed, and everyone who's used to normal Simver always gets confused. And I know Brad always has to
right,
pull up
yeah.
the
And
whole
so,
Lucy doesn't do Simver the way everyone else does Simver conversation.
well, everyone comes with a giant asterisk. If you're talking about like the Node community, everyone is mostly a monolith, but the Java community has a lot of different ideas about Simvar. But yeah, with Lucee, the first number is not a major version. It's really like a paradigm um, number. So they only commit the major number when there's like a huge rewrite of the engine. The
Yep.
second number is really their major version. That's where they introduce breaking changes. The third number is really their minor version. The fourth number is basically a build,
Yep.
if you will. So you have to make sure you think of that, not in the terms if you're used to, NPM flavor of semantic versioning.
Yep.
I'd like to point out that I am happy to see fixes, because I mean Lucee 6 is still in development and has been for like 50,000 years, but I'm glad to still see fixes being backported into the 5.3.10, which is I think like it's not release candidate, but it's a beta of some kind. And then also back to 5.3.9, which is the current stable version. It's a lot of times it will happen, Lucee will always just put the fixes in the latest version and be like, you should upgrade, which is like okay, but it's nice to see them backporting, especially these bug fixes.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times somebody gets stuck on 5.3.9 or 5.3.8, and maybe there's a breaking change. There's a good reason why they can't update, and it's important for them to be able to get those bug fixes. So kudos to Lucee. I think that's largely Zach Spitzer, putting the work into tracking all that stuff down.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a good thing. Absolutely. So it looks like Scott's saying it seems like null pointer exceptions errors happen throughout many Lucee versions. So what causes an MPE?
Well,
that's a pretty big question right there.
that's like asking what causes a car not to start. I mean, that's an incredibly generic classification of error that just simply means something was null, and there's near limitless number of possible scenarios that can lead to something being null that wasn't supposed to be null. So it's not like all NPEs have a related root cause.
Yeah.
That's just a really common symptom to a whole variety of possible problems.
Yeah, I try to do something, but that something doesn't exist anymore. Kind of thing. Yeah. So I always see them as well. They pop up, and I hate it when they're in ORM because then I'm really confused because it's already confusing. Then it's a null pointer exception inside of ORM makes it even worse.
ORM's already confusing, and NPEs are already confusing to troubleshoot. So you have like the nexus of the most possible confusing things come together.
Okay, so we have a relevant talk about an update. So in the October 2022 CF updates, they removed the log viewer from the CF admin, and so apparently you can restore it, but at your own risk.
Oh, I had not seen it could be restored. I was kind of surprised by that. I mean, I assumed there was obviously some vulnerability in it. Adobe, declined to say why they had removed it or what the vulnerability was. I was a little surprised in that I thought it wouldn't be like that hard to be able to, properly encode any output such that, potentially malicious text in the log file would be safe to display. But obviously, it appears Adobe felt that they were unable or incapable of properly escaping whatever text might be in a log file, and so they just literally removed the entire feature. Now maybe that wasn't the attack vector. Maybe there was some completely different vector that allowed you to open up arbitrary files and view them in the log viewer. I don't know. Unfortunately, most all the CVEs in the last Adobe update, and there was quite a few of them, weren't even published when the updates came out. And even when I looked at them, they were all just incredibly vague, which I know I complain when people put too much details in CVEs, but I'm also like super curious, and I've been dying to know just exactly what some of these things were. But I know that there were a few people in Slack basically saying, hey, I don't have access to servers. My log viewer is like the only window I have into what's going on. And that basically went away after the update. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, it was definitely an issue, And so, like Charlie said, basically what he did was he took a backup of his folders before he ran the update, because usually the updates actually make backups for you, but in this case,
Right.
those folders weren't there. So he's actually basically, he got a copy of it before he updated, and he has those folders available in a zip file that you can download. And he says he wasn't sure if he should show people or not, or share it or not, because, it is a possible vulnerability, but it's your
But
choice if you choose to use it or not. But,
did he recommend replacing the entire CFID administrator folder, or did he just piecemeal a couple files to get it
I
back?
think it's just a couple of folders. So,
That
let's
definitely
see.
sounds like this is something a little dangerous.
Yeah, so you find the administrative folder with your CFusion instances. Within the admin folder, find its logging and logviewer folders. Copy those folders to a unit aim, and then extract the two folders from the zip, putting them in place where you removed the other one. So, in other words, they have folders in the new version, but they're kind of like just dud ones. And so if you put the zip ones in that place, you're just replacing the logging folder and the
Yeah,
logviewer folder. So,
there's gonna be a lot of caveats that go with that. It's gonna be a little dangerous in that, I mean, there's a good chance that at some point those are gonna be incompatible with it based on what kind of codes in them. I really wish we could see the ColdFusion administrator, ColdFusion code,
yeah.
and we would have the ability to remediate any things that we thought run there on our own. Blindly copying an old version really makes me nervous, but I
Yeah.
appreciate
I mean,
Charlie
that
documenting that.
exactly. Well, hopefully Adobe took it out as a short-term fix until they have time to remediate it, and then they'll replace it with a version that's safe. That's what I think people are hoping for. So hopefully this is a short-term fix. But again, you need to make sure that you actually get it, and you pay attention to that. Put an issue in your bug tracker or something that makes sure that you go back and look later to see or to update those photos. Don't be one of those
And
things where you change
and
it and forget you did, and put
for
it
what it's
somewhere.
worth, if you work at a shop where you don't have the ability to RDP or SSH into your production servers, there's a number of tools out there, especially with the advent of Docker's popularity, like the Elasticsearch Kibana stuff that have file beats, clients that will send log files to an external server where you can parse through sumo logic kind of stuff. So I know sometimes it can be difficult to get those things through your ops team, but there's a lot of tools out there explicitly for the purpose of shipping your log files somewhere where you can get your hands wrapped around them, which is probably a much better long-term solution than trying to get the log viewer
Yeah.
functionality back into the administrator, as out of the box convenient as that may be.
Yep, and remember, a lot of those tools have like free tiers for your development. If it's local development, you're more
Ooh,
concerned about as
ooh, you know
well.
what this is a good
But
time for a plug for? The
Logbox.
latest version of Fusion Reactor, which
Ah,
has its own version basically of log shipping. I hate to use the word log shipping, as it makes me think of SQL Server, but the latest version of Fusion Reactor has their own basic equivalent of that. And they only pull some log files by default. They have the ability to go in and specify basically like globbing patterns where you can have it send additional log files. So just
hmm.
another note, because people using ColdFusion are more likely to already have Fusion Reactor in the mix, and that may be a functionality they're not aware they can tap into right
Yeah,
now.
that's cool. Okay. Well, also just a quick reminder, CBWire, we had a 2.1 release. We talked about it last week, so we'll keep it there. But Grant is doing some pretty cool stuff with CBWire. I actually had a meeting with him last week, and we went over some of the new stuff that he's adding, so the 2.2 stuff, and what we're doing. He's got some cool ideas, and I'm excited about what we could do with it. So we're going to be tapping into more of the CB security stuff and JWT for more secured pieces, but all within CBWire. I mean, really, with the stuff he's doing, you really don't need an API. You can really do a lot of this from ColdFusion now. It's pretty dang slick. I'm more and more impressed every time I talk to him. So check
Do we
out
do we have a
CBWire.
CFcast series yet on CBWire?
Nope, but he does want to work on that soon. But the
Oh,
CBWire
cool.
examples, and I'll actually going to post that real quick. It's a pretty cool little example repo, and he keeps adding to it. There's a ton of stuff there. I mean, he showed me the other day where basically you can keep track of the seconds watched in a Vimeo recording, because like the Vimeo JavaScript tool actually like has like announcements where it emits every second that someone's watching, so you can actually have CBWire watch that and update your information. So when someone comes back to your CFCast video, for example, it'll know exactly where you were when you left and stuff like that. and it's really simple to tie into. He's doing a lot of cool stuff with it. And coding with the Kiwi, starting in the new year, I'm going to be working with Grant to rebuild the developer feud Box Wars app, but in CBWire instead of Quasar or with API. So we're going to actually try and reproduce that in ColdFusion without an API, without a JavaScript app, but all CBWire. So it'll be kind of cool experience walking through that. So anyways, we're a lot of cool stuff. So go check that out. Keep an eye on what Grant's doing there. It is really cool if you don't want to have to dive into APIs and JavaScript frameworks and stuff and still get the same benefits. It really is. It's getting pretty damn cool. Okay, so webinars, meetups, and workshops. And for those of you that want to see Ortus's events easily on your Google Calendar, we have a link now where that we can basically add your calendar or add it into your calendar. So I'll share that in the chat here. But basically just we'll have all our webinars because remember, we're starting to do a lot more of them. So we have a few more coming out. And this week, we're going to be doing our first episode of the Ortus Software Craftsmanship Book Club, Patreons only. So it'll be November the 11th, 2 p.m. Central, and it's going to be every second Friday of the month, essentially. We're starting with Clean Code, a handbook of agile software craftsmanship by Robert Martin or Uncle Bob. And so we'll meet on Zoom monthly. We'll use the community forum for the patrons to discuss the book. So we have a link there. If you are a Patreon member and you don't have access, ping me and I'll make sure that you get into it. But the cool thing is that it'll basically have all the discussion, everything there, and we're going to be working through that book. We're going to try and start with like chapter 1, which is basically what is clean code and why does it matter. We'll try and work on that this week, and then from there we'll move on. But part of the whole experience too is that we want to be rewriting all the Java examples in there to CFML. So Adam Cameron's like, oh god, that's this Friday. So I guess he forgot he was going to be. Although I did invite him to come join that as well, and hopefully like Brad or Luis or some other people can come in there. And that's the cool thing about it, is to try and share our ideas and thoughts on clean code and what's relative to ColdFusion and what's not, because a lot of stuff in it is Java, and like you can't overload. I mean, you can't have there's a lot of things that are different, right?
Yeah, Clean Code's a great book. We went through it. All the developers at one of my previous companies went through it and read it as part of kind of a book club internally. And we didn't always agree with everything, but everything in there was good for conversation. To talk about what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. And if you're at least thinking about why you're writing the crap you're writing, you're usually in a better place than you were.
Yep.
If you can at least have some justification for what you think you're doing. But
yeah. And it's, like you said, it's a good book. A lot of good things to think about. Not everything's perfect. And, one of the things they actually say in the book, which I liked, is the fact that they're like, you know what? This is similar to like martial arts, right? Like there's all these different studios that sort of evolved and grown their own version of their martial arts, and they've learned from different teachers. And just because, that you don't do it quite the same as somebody else doesn't mean that the other person is not the right way or the correct way. This is a group of software developers that released this, and this is what they think, and this is what is working for them. And so, a lot of people are using this, but doesn't mean it's perfect. And there's other, methodologies, there's other ideas out there, and you can learn from lots of people and then take what's best and move on. And, and that's kind of the goal, is to get everyone's opinion on a lot of the stuff. So, but anyway, so that'll be Friday, this Friday, the 11th at 2 Central or noon Pacific. And Scott in the chat just said, which is not to say that there is not a wrong way of doing it, because if you look at your code, you can probably see a wrong way. But there's
multiple right ways, there's multiple wrong ways.
Yeah. So I'm excited about this. Like I said, it's something I wanted to do for a while, and I've actually been reading a lot of his other books as well, and some other company books, like the software development at Google, which is a really great book too. So. But anyway, we're going to start this Friday, so hopefully the patrons can join us. We'll record it. We'll make it available for you guys to see what you missed, and hopefully you'll want to become a Patreon so you can join the next one. So, okay, so you want to tell us about the Ortus webinar coming up later in the month, the third Friday of the month, which is our webinar day.
We have Daniel Garcia covering API testing with Postman.
Yep.
I don't know if we have a description, though I think it's probably pretty...
So,
pretty obvious where he's going with that.
Yeah, I mean, basically we're looking at testing the API. He's done a few talks about API testing and tools like Postman and everything. So this is more of a practical, like, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is how I set it up. And he's going to be looking at, I think he's going to be looking at the HFMC REST template for APIs, because everyone can download that code. It's easily accessible. It has some Swagger docs already and everything else. So he's going to show you how to get it set up, how to automatically, put the JWT into a variable. So as you're making calls in your site, you don't have to worry about copying that code to all the bearer token places, etc. And show you how to actually do a little testing in your API with it, but just how to get it set up and actually use it. So he's talked about why you should use it and how it's a cool tool. This one he's actually going to do a practical walkthrough so you can actually start using it. So I think that'll be a really good session. And then apparently this guy Brad Wood that's hosting with me is going to be on the CFHawaii meetup coming up soon. You want to tell us about that?
That's what they tell me. I think John's actually in the chat here. John Barrett, the manager of the Hawaii user group. But yeah, he asked me to do a presentation just on CommandBox. He's been getting into CommandBox himself and learning CFconfig, and he wanted to present that to the Hawaii user group. Which I mean, the presentations are online, so even though it's the Hawaii user group, I'm pretty certain anybody can tune in. So I'll gladly talk about CommandBox, the drop of a hat. So, oh, there he is in the chat. Hi, John. So yeah, just it'll be starting hopefully kind of from ground zero. What is CommandBox? How to use it? How to inject it into your developer workflow? The basic stuff you need to know to be able to configure. CommandBox server, get familiar with CFconfig. So anyway, it should be fun. It's going to be similar to other talks that I've given, but feel free to tune in. And of course, I always am open for questions during the presentation. So assuming we're on some medium where I can see the chat, I'll also interact with any questions people have during that. So looking forward to that one.
Yep. And so I'll get that link sent out. But then we also have the CF Summit Online sessions that we talked about last week. So Adobe is getting all the speakers from CF Summit to represent their sessions online so they can stream it and record it. And we mentioned that last week, as I said, but we've got a few announced already. So I know there's at least two. And so the first one I think is kicking it off is Charlie Earhart's going to be doing how the Adobe CF Docker images have evolved. That's going to be Wednesday, November 16th at 12 to 1 p.m. Eastern. And then there's a link on how to register for that. And then it looks like you're doing your talk on November the 30th from 1 to 2 Eastern. And you're going to be speaking about message queues for RabbitMQ, right?
Yeah, and I just added that into the show notes, as you noticed. I don't know if Adobe is publishing these anywhere, but
they will
just
be.
Yesterday. Okay, yeah. Just yesterday, I was emailing with Apruva and Kishore, finalizing the time and the date on that. So yeah, it'll be the same talk I gave at CF Summit, but online for anybody who missed it. And It's just kind of an introduction into RabbitMQ, message queues, what they look like, bunch of example code, and unfortunately, I could talk for like an entire day on all the cool stuff RabbitMQ does, but only given an hour, it's basically just kind of how to get started and then point you towards the documentation where you can learn more.
Yep. So we have a few more in here in the meetus.adobeevents.com. And so you can see Charlie's one is on the 16th. I don't see your one in here yet. But I do see some, other bits and pieces slowly sneaking into here. So they must be getting it out. So as they update it, we'll let you guys know. But we know those two. I think there's actually a few more that have already been confirmed because as a speaker, we got an email saying, hey, which dates do you want? But these ones are taken. So I see quite a few in there already. So we'll get more
I got the same
coming.
email, and I was kind of thinking, what are they going to do if like 4 people all reply back at the same time with the same date? But I don't know. Not my circus, not my monkeys.
Yep, exactly. But if you are wanting to sign up to Charlie's, I'll share that link here with you. And then, as we get the links for Brad's and everybody else's, we will share them as well. So, pretty cool. And then we also have the Ortus Office Hours. So last week we had our very first Ortus Office Hours. We used to have the ColdBox connection way back in the day, and so we're trying to renew that initiative. So basically we're trying to get at least 3 or 4 Ortusians in a room, and then post it out there for people to come and join and ask some questions. Sort of like a normal open office hour like you used to have at university or high school, where you can go talk to the teacher and ask. And so Last week we had a few people come in, and some of them just wanted to hang out and say hi, and some people, had a couple little things, and so we're looking at some Vue 3 updates with Webpack and trying to get Vue 3 running along with Elixir. So that's one of the things that popped up there. But, basically really open, friendly chit chat, and we have a link for you guys to go register for the next one, which will be December 2nd, 11 a.m. Central. And so the last one, Daniel, myself, and Grant were in there. And we had a couple other people pop in as well, like Dan Card jumped in as well. But the goal is to get at least 3 or 4 Ortusians there. So Daniel's the one hosting it, and he'll be inviting various Ortus members to join. And if you have any questions, reach out to Daniel Garcia and let him know in advance, and he'll try and rope the right Ortus person in there. If you're going to talk about CommandBox, we'll probably see if Brad's available. But if we're talking about, Elasticsearch or something, we'll get Michael Bourne or John Clausen in there. Try to find the best, the expert in our team for that technology. So, but that's going to be December 2nd, 11 a.m. Central, first Friday of the month. So. And then also, I didn't notice this, but Pete's been advertising his ColdFusion security training, writing secure CFML, for a little while. I missed it, so we're finally adding it. Sorry, Pete, but
yeah, I saw it a few weeks back, but he had kind of slipped it out under the radar.
Yeah, slippery little booger. Must be the security stuff he does, sneaky. But yeah. So he's going to be doing that Tuesday, December the 13th. So it's 2 blocks. It'll be 3 hours on the Tuesday and then 3 hours on the Wednesday. And so 6 hours in total. And I think this is basically his training security that he's done for several years now. He's updated it and improved it, obviously, but I took it a long time ago at CF Summit and really thought it was pretty awesome. So I think it's well worth it. It is $8.99 for the early bird discount. And so if you guys check that out, you can get that. Otherwise, it'll be $9.99 closer to the time. So Pete's great. He always scares everything out of you. But the good thing is that you usually learn from it, and it'll make you a little more vigilant going forward, and make your servers more secure in the process. So
Pete should do some kind of training where he tries to hack your site as part of a training, and if he can't find a vulnerability, then you get a refund or something. I don't know, just throwing it out there.
Yeah, we could just make it so it's like HTML, blocked, locked, or it's a big image, or do something where you can't get in. We'll just block all IPs today.
Big image.
But yeah, so that's a good session coming up. And then of course we have the Adobe workshops and webinars as well. So the Road to Fortuna is going to be on November 23rd. So they moved that from December into November. So right before Thanksgiving, you guys can find out all about Adobe ColdFusion Fortuna, which is the
Am I the only one who hears Carl Orff's "Oh Fortuna" in my head as soon as you say that? Oh Fortuna! I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, so no, I definitely don't have it in my head.
It's classical music. You would have to be. Okay, Adam says nope. No. I guess you would have to be cultured.
Yeah, that's not me. You should know that already. And then if you want to find out more, again, we have a couple of the ColdFusion ones. Apparently there's a summit online on the 12th too, so I think one of the other speakers is talking on the 12th of January, but we just don't know who yet. So, but anyway, so lots of cool stuff coming up from Adobe. Mark Takata is going to do one in December, but there's going to be lots of other stuff coming. Okay, that's a lot of stuff. Let's move on to CFCasts. So CFCasts is our online video tutorials. We have a lot of great content, and we released my webinar, Step Up Your Testing, from a couple weeks back recently on there. And we also have every video for ITB, but only for ITB ticket holders right now. You will be able to watch it if you're a paid subscriber. In December, we'll be releasing the rest of the videos. And we now have, 48 videos and 9 hours for the ColdBox Master Class, which is now free. So it's not newly released, but it's newly available for free.
You're going to have a lot of stuff to watch in December is basically what we're saying.
Yeah, tons and tons of content. So definitely worth checking into that. And of course, we have our ForgeBox module of the week from the podcast and the VS Code hint, tip, and trick of the week that we release every week as well on CFcast. So you guys can just watch those. Don't want to listen to us? That's fine. You can just skip it and go straight to the VS Code series and watch all the ones we've done this year, pretty much, which is a lot. And then we're working on some new series too. So Eric's working on a ColdBox Elixir one. Daniel Garcia's working on a getting started with content box. I'm working on a boxification, so boxifying third-party libraries, and a lot of good content coming soon. But we've got plenty there already. So, okay, you want to tell us a little bit about some of these upcoming conferences, Brad?
Yeah, we've got Deploy from DigitalOcean, which is November 15th and 16th. It is a virtual conference. We like DigitalOcean. We do our hosting there at Ortus, so that's a fun one. We have Into the Box LATAM, Latin America, which is going to be December. What? Who?
I
Where?
was gonna
Where?
say,
Who,
you
when?
going this year?
I am. I will be down in El Salvador for ITB LATAM. I was just talking with Luis this morning, asking when we're going to get the tickets for that, because December is such a busy month for all the end of school choir concerts and band concerts. I'm going to miss one of each to be there. But yeah, so I'm going to be down there December 7th in Central America at the Hyatt Centric. Anyway, so that should be fun. I'm hoping there's enough people who speak better English than I speak Spanish. I'm sure they will. I had a great time last time I was in El Salvador, and I'm super excited to go back and get me some like ceviche.
Yeah.
We also have Vue.js Amsterdam 2023. So that's in upcoming February 9th and 10th. Theater Amsterdam. So is this an in-person conference?
Yeah, it's in person.
Ooh.
They actually have blind tickets available now, so before they announce the speakers and workshops, I'll share my screen for those watching. I kind of like their
I
website.
think Vil is probably the closest person who's live with us right now to this thing.
Yep, so it looks like a lot of fun. 2,000 people from 50 countries apparently. So,
Wow. About the
yeah,
size of DevNexus. Nice.
yep. Speaking of DevNexus, I think that's next on the list, isn't it?
What? I don't know. I haven't scrolled down that far.
Yep.
Oh,
So
look, DevNexus. The call
DevNexus,
for papers. Yes. The call
yeah,
for papers ends on November 15th. So about a week from today. Well, I don't know today. It's a week from now, give or take a few days. So if you were planning on going to DevNexus and you were going to submit a topic, do so. I was just telling Gavin today they have a lot of like soft skills, agile development, JavaScript frameworks, even though it's primarily a Java conference. It's a pretty fun conference to speak at as well, just because they have so much stuff.
yeah,
But yeah, the Ortus people will be there at the conference. Hopefully, some of us will be speaking. They never ever accept my ColdFusion talks, but hey.
but you've done a lot of other talks though, so
Yeah, I've spoken multiple years there on password hatching, best practices. We've talked on rabbit queues, all sorts of stuff. So
yep,
it's a fun conference to be to. It's April 4th through 6th. They also have a full day of workshops every year as well, which are a pretty good deal.
yep,
And then we have Vue.js Live,
yep.
online as well as London, UK. So this is going to be May 5th and 8th. Is that supposed to be 5th through the 8th?
No,
Maybe it's not the 5th and the 8th.
it's kind of a weird one. I think it is
Really?
actually.
I'm trying
It's
to
well,
look at
actually they changed the dates
May.
now, so now it's May 12th and 15th. So,
Oh my gosh.
I'll
What are they
just
doing to us?
I
Well,
know. That's actually
it's
worse because that'll clash with Into the Box.
well,
So,
we'll have to figure it out.
but you can,
35 speakers, 10 workshops.
yep, 10,000 joining locally, globally, and 300 luckies in London. You get your early bird tickets, and the cool thing is, watch the recordings from last year right on the site. So it's nice that they have those available.
Sweet. And speaking of conferences happening in May, we have our Into the Box 2023, our 10th edition. Can't
Yep,
believe it'll be the 10th year we've done Into the Box. That's going to be May 17th, 18th, and 19th, what we're looking at. So we're finally moving from the end of the year in September back to the May time, trying to avoid the CF Summit, the possibility of CF Camp that happened there in September, October. So as soon as the hotel confirms our availability, we should be finalizing those dates, and we should be doing the call for speakers very, very soon.
yep. I know. I
So
think we're waiting just for the new logo. We got the 2023 logo that will be slamming on the call for speakers, and it should be out any day now. It's really close. So start thinking about it, and we'll be having blind tickets coming out soon. But our goal is to get all the speakers, sessions and workshops, ideas and everything all decided so we can release it. So basically, the start of the next year, we'll have everything announced and solid. That way you guys can make your final decisions. I know a lot of people don't like going to a conference blind. We're lucky with Into the Box. A lot of people just want to be there anyway because they know it's going to be great, and so that's really great to see that. But we are going to try and do some different stuff, though. It's the 10th edition. We want to spice it up a little bit. And so we're talking about maybe doing like a Raspberry Pi hackathon workshop. We talked about doing little things after Happy Box where basically bring out the birds of a feather type thing from CF Objective. We could do some Pi hacking, developer wars game as
What
well.
if we just had a room with just Pi, like apple pie, cherry pie, apricot pie,
and Raspberry Pi.
Throwing it out there.
Yeah, I think we could make it the Pi room. I think that's a really good idea, Brad. I like it.
We'd have the Pi room and then the Pi room.
Yeah. So anyway, if you got ideas for workshops, like last year, we put a tweet vote out there, and you guys voted for the Vue.js one, the Quasar session that I did, and we got a lot of good responses in the polls, and a lot of people showed up for that one. So if you guys have ideas on what you'd like to see as a workshop, let us know. We're still deciding. So
yeah, we had a ton of workshops last year, and they were all the ones the community voted to have. So it was great.
Yep. And yeah, obviously if you guys are voting, hopefully you'll vote because you want to see it, but hopefully you'll vote because you'll want to go to it too. Don't just vote if you know you're not going to come. But we still want to know what's popular. But if everyone who's coming likes something and everyone who's not coming likes something else, it might not be as helpful. But CF Camp, again, they're still trying for summer 2023. I haven't heard anything official yet, both ways, on or not. So we're hopeful. So fingers crossed, we should have some news for you soon about that. Because I know with conferences, you got to plan ahead. So yeah, they are doing their due diligence, and hopefully we'll have an answer for you soon. And if you need more conferences, comps.tech has a lot of cool stuff. So, oh man, feels like I've been talking for hours. Blog tweets and videos of the week. You want to start with the first one, which we can kind of gloss over because it's just Luis talking about.
Yeah, we talked about this earlier. It's the Wirebox 7 delegates, the power of new Wirebox 7 delegates. Traits for ColdFusion CFML are here. Composable, reusability to modernize your CFCs. So,
but the next one is another tweet from Luis, and
yeah,
this
CB
is
Security V3
coming. We have a new logo.
Ooh. Including the new security firewall visualizer.
So yeah, we've got this little activity log here in the visualizer. We've got this little visualizer tool.
You guys wouldn't believe that what we go through to make a new logo. We're like voting and Slack, and the design team will make like 10 different ideas.
Yep, and so you can see you can visualize your settings, you can visualize what's happening. A lot is coming in this version 3 of the CB Security, and the visualizer is going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, Luis has been going crazy with CB Security. I know he sat down and looked at just a whole bunch of like Laravel projects to see everything they're doing, and was just adding features like crazy to CB Security just to try to cover as much ground. He really is wanting to make CB Security be a module you can drop in and just have as much capability as possible. So that's exciting for sure.
Yep, for sure. So it's going to have a lot of cool stuff in there. And when Luis moved to Malaga, Spain, nobody realized that meant that he was going to have a few hours without Slack bugging him. So he's getting so productive. It's really great to have the old crazy Lucee.
Yeah, that European time zone where like we're all asleep and he's getting up and starting his day, and he can just do whatever he wants, unfettered, until we all come online and start bugging him.
Yeah, except for when I stay up late and he's getting up and I'm still on at like 1 a.m. And then he's like, "You're still here?" Like, oh man.
Yeah, when I stay up till 1 or 2, when I see people coming online in Europe, I know I need to be in bed.
Yep. So also we had the holiday season announcement of the ColdBox Master Class, so that blog post is in there. And then next up we have one from Ben Adele. So this is new, so we'll talk about this one. So this is proxying Gravatar images for better caching. So this is an interesting one. So Gravatar is one of the more popular avatar services out there, and it came from the whole WordPress thing and stuff. But apparently just using them directly, your lighthouse scores are going to suffer. And so basically what he did was proxied through ColdFusion so we could apply some cache control headers to help improve that. So this sort of talks through this process.
I haven't tried it, but is it wrong that the first thing I thought was I could probably do this with a CommandBox server rule and not have to even touch ColdFusion?
Well, that's nice if you can. Yeah, I mean, I mean,
because I can do a reverse proxy in CommandBox, and I wouldn't even have to touch Lucee or Adobe to be able to proxy it. Um, I mean, you could also do the same thing with any actual web server, but
yeah,
um, it's possible he's doing some extra logic that he needs to hit with ColdFusion.
not a
Which
lot. I mean,
if
he's just adding
so,
caching headers, really. I mean, that's all
oh,
he's doing.
actually looking at his code, it looks like he's taking the member ID and looking up the member's email address and hashing it, and then he creates it.
Yeah, but still, if you have the email
Yeah.
address, I mean, essentially anything that's going to the Gravatar avatar link, like you said, you could just redirect. You could just
Yeah, it's
proxy
kind
it
of a
through it.
shame they don't have any configurability to change the headers they send back. But I mean, Gravatar is like a free service, so I guess you can't complain that much.
Yeah, but I found it interesting though, because I was thinking, what if you could just use a CDN? And so he talks about how he tried to cache behind Cloudflare CDN. So he was trying to use that, but it wasn't quite that simple. Apparently, Cloudflare caches on file extensions or whatever. So, but you can do it
Yeah, I
with
mean,
page rules, but it's not on the free plan.
the unfortunate thing is you're kind of like sort of defeating the purpose, and I mean not the main purpose of Gravatar, but just the idea of having a CDN out there that people's browsers are all just directly going off to the Gravatar site to get the Gravatars. But now when you bounce it all through your server, you're taking that load on to be able to modify it, which sort of sucks. But I mean, I don't know if there's much of a better answer to that, to be honest.
Yeah, no, for sure. But anyways, a good post and made me think a little bit more. Those lighthouse scores are important. I actually found a tool last week that did some pretty cool scans and everything, and I should probably share that. I'll try and find that and share it next week because it was a pretty cool tool that you can run on your sites and it give you a big list of accessibility things and scores for all sorts of different bits and pieces and some ways to resolve it. So there's a lot of tools out there. But this one was free and it did a pretty good report. I like the fact that the report had all the steps to mitigate it too, so you could actually learn from it and share it with the team. But we also had a LinkedIn post from Luis, which talked about the first meetup in Malaga, Spain. By the sounds of it, did you check that out?
I saw Luis tweet about it, but I didn't realize that he made Jorge actually present.
Yeah, so Hoy from Ortus was basically teaching people about different licenses for open source software. And then they had some local developers actually introduce their project, so that was kind of cool. So they have the
So they
meetup
were
and a part of
talking
it.
at Jay on the beach,
Yeah,
bringing developers, DevOps, and data scientists together around big data.
yeah.
Huh.
So
Huh.
yeah, so
There you go.
Luis is starting the grassroots stuff and making progress over there. So good to see. So we're invading Spain. Maybe I shouldn't say that.
Every day we wake up and we say, "What are we going to do today, Luis?" And he says, "Try to take over the world." Anyway, so
Yeah. So
now you
next
know.
up, we had one from Charlie. So this one was enabling ColdFusion to switch using Java's regex engine. So a few people have issues using the regular expressions in CFML, which are actually Perl's style, if you didn't know. But you can tell Adobe to say, hey, I want to use Java's instead. It's been possible for quite a while, and it was introduced in 2018's Update 5, but it's built into 2021. So
And
basically, you can,
Lucee, did he talk about Lucee at all? Oh, it's on the ColdFusion blog, so no,
yeah,
he wouldn't talk about Lucee.
yep.
Oh, no, he did. He did. At the very bottom, for those who may wonder, Vince Post sparked Lucee to add the feature in 538. Because I was going to say Lucee
Ooh,
also added this feature, but
very
I
cool.
can't believe Charlie had the gall to mention Lucee on the
I can't
ColdFusion.
believe they approved it. No,
Well,
it's
it would be unlike Charlie to leave out any possible relevant details. So
no Charlie. I mean, Charlie's fair to everybody involved. I mean, his goal is to spread information and help people, and that's what he does. So, speaking of Charlie, though, there's another one here, and so it's basically just talking about his session, how he's going to be doing how Adobe CF Docker images have evolved at CF Summit Online, and then Nolan actually had a little blog post about um, the training for the ColdBox Master Class. So
yep,
I
yep.
like this because he actually does, give some reasons. And like I said, it's free. It's free. Basically, they're short videos. It's real bite-sized chunks and everything else. And I mean, he worked on it a long time. Back and forth, because obviously Nolan does a lot of work with a lot of people. He works with different frameworks. He does Framework One and everything else as well. So he's not like Luis, where he, like he lives, breathes, and sleeps ColdBox. And so he wanted to make sure it was open and easy to digest for everybody. So I think it's a cool little take. And again, he did put a lot of time into this and help us build this. So it's nice to see him thanking us and sharing that out there too. And it's funny, he spread it on Twitter and everyone's like, thanks Nolan. He's like, well, I appreciate the thanks, but it's not me that's making it free. So, and then we also mentioned the OpenSSL ColdFusion, so we posted that already. And then this other one here, I'll share my screen and you can tell us about what sparked this little tweet thread that you had.
I don't know you're gonna bring that up, Kev. Yeah, it was interesting. Somebody had I'll say what they said. We'll talk about what the conversation was. He said he lost a lot of respect in the past job sticking with ColdFusion, even to the point he was moved sideways in a new project manager who came in with PHP to the new project. But he said he left, and 7 years later, the ColdFusion still runs their business, and the PHP project is dead and buried. It's funny. The conversation was kind of just talking about how old languages kind of just never go away sometimes. There was an original tweet which is still being retweeted today. This original tweet sent by some person I don't know was gotten
Vic
2,800 retweets, 20,000 likes. Well, basically, kind of joking, 1995, PHP is dead, learn ColdFusion. 2022, PHP is dead, learn ASP. And every few years, people will say, switch technologies, and the whole point is, PHP is still around, it's still evolving, it's still in use. So I sent my own tweet, which sadly did not get nearly 3,000 retweets and 20,000 likes. I can't imagine why. But I just replaced PHP with CFML in my tweet, and I replaced ColdFusion with PHP, just to kind of be funny, because ColdFusion is the same age as PHP. It has a lot of the same backstory as far as kind of being hated on as a language and also sticking around, even though ColdFusion, is not nearly as big as PHP is. But anyway, it sparks some interesting conversation, just talking about, people who've been using ColdFusion for a long time and how the technologies tend to stick around for a while, even though there's new and shiny stuff that comes out. And obviously we learn new frameworks, we learn new languages, we keep up with technology, but we don't just dump a technology because a new one came out. So it was a fun thing on Twitter.
Yeah. So I thought we'd share that, but I like the post that, I guess it says two things, right? ColdFusion's not as bad as everybody thinks it is, because it can still run your business, and the whole idea of let's just bring in another language and rewrite all our logic and everything else and replace it, because usually those fail too.
Adam Cameron mentioned COBOL in the chat. The last ColdFusion shop that I worked at here in Kansas City, their company ran on COBOL. It ran on an AS400 with an IBM DB2 database, and pretty much everything was written in COBOL.
Yeah,
it was interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff out there. I mean, the thing is, it's really hard to replace everything, especially if things are moving on and improving. And I mean, one of the stories inside of the Clean Code's first chapter talks about the whole Greenfield project where everyone's like, this code is terrible, so we gotta do a new project. So you get a Tiger team and they work on all this stuff and they try to work hard to improve stuff, but they're trying to keep up with the other team that's doing new stuff. And it sounds like Ben Adele's story at where he's working. In the end, like by the time that the project is done, the Tiger team people left and new people are in, and then they think that code is crap and they want to rewrite it again. And it's a cycle. It's a
vicious cycle.
Yeah. So it's one of those types of things. But
ooh, can I spin up COBOL with CommandBox? You know what? If there's a Java port of COBOL, you can. There is a PHP servlet port where you can run PHP code in Java. And I have actually played with that with CommandBox before, starting it up as a war and running PHP code in CommandBox. But I don't know.
I wonder if we can get Laravel running under CommandBox. That'd be fun.
I do know that because the shop that I worked at that did COBOL, they did keep current with their versions, right? Like their AS400 used to fill the entire server room, like physically filled the room. And when I worked there, it was down to like this much of a rack server. I'm holding my hands about 2 feet apart, right? And I remember them telling me you could run Java on the modern like COBOL servers. I just don't know
Hmm.
if it goes the other way around.
Yeah. So Adam's saying Joe Ball.
Yeah, Joe Ball.
Yep.
It's funny.
Well.
All right, you get a tweet from me.
Yep. And I jumped straight to the article that you talked about.
All
So
right, yeah. If anyone's caught out by Microsoft 365's removal of plain text passwords to check Exchange mail, I just fixed this for a client. It's funny. I was working. We had a client and they use CFI map, and I just happened to see someone on Slack mention, "Oh yeah, the Office 365 Exchange is gonna not deprecate, but remove the ability to use plain text passwords soon." This was a couple months ago, and I was like, "Oh crap! Like, I better like tell my client this, or all of a sudden their stuff's gonna quit working." So, we'd already been doing some work with the Graph API, and Microsoft has their entire kind of like OAuth flow. You can do single sign-on, you can do client app flows, and so I had implemented the basic code to do an OAuth login using a client secret. Um, and check the email for a given account, download the messages, basically what like a CFI map call would do just to get all messages. And I'd already implemented a CFC that mostly was kind of a drop-in replacement. It would give you back the same query object and do the same basic thing that CFI map did. And I saw some people talking about it on the Lucee forum, saying, "Ah, crap, my app just quit working because plain text passwords don't work anymore." So I cleaned out all of the client specific stuff and I posted that as a CFC as a starting point. It does assume you're using Wirebox. It does assume you're using Hyper and Logbox, but those aren't major requirements. You could easily refactor the code I posted to not use ColdBox in any way. The OAuth flow, the Graph API calls would all be the same thing. But anyway, yeah. If you're using any of the Microsoft Exchange 365 stuff, and you're using CFPOP or CFIMAP, where you have a hard-coded username and password, it will bite you soon, and you'll be scrambling to figure out the OAuth API. So hopefully some people can use that code that I posted as a starting point to get them moved over.
cool. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of work with Microsoft's infrastructure stuff lately too. Working with some SharePoint stuff. That's kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Is once you figure out where to actually set up your app secrets and stuff, because there's a million different places to do it. That was my thing. Is like, which credentials do I need here? But Adam is still talking about COBOL. So the JVM COBOL compiles to Java bytecode, which runs directly inside the JVM. So you can do CF COBOL for the win.
Is this like the Rule 34 of the JVM or something? Like no matter what it is, somebody has it running of a JVM somewhere. I don't know. Like in the worst possible way.
Yep, for
We were
sure.
just joking, but nope, it really is a thing.
Yep. So we did mention Lucee's release, so I'll just post the link for anyone who cares there. But 539166 is stable and released. And then we also had the blog post where Charlie talked about how to restore the admin log viewer stuff and why you may not want to do it or may want to figure out a better way to do it. And then I was on a podcast, so I've been helping Michaela from TerraTech cover the State of the CF Union survey. So in previous years, you've had 3, 4 basically podcasts as you guys discuss the results. This year I've stepped in and tried to take over a little bit there, so that way it gives you more time for other things. So this second part of the series, we talked about like the middle chunk of the survey, lots of great stuff in there. So that's on the CFLI podcast. And the third one we released in a couple more weeks, and then you guys have been working on some trends, right, Brad? Do you want to give them a tease of what you guys are going to be talking about?
Well, yeah, and we've been doing the State of the CF Union survey long enough, and we had the same basic questions every year, but there's a handful of questions such as what version of ColdFusion are you using, that we're able to kind of piece together the information across the years and see some interesting trends on, are the ColdFusion 9 numbers going down? Are they staying the same? How many people have adopted ColdFusion 2021? It's really cool to see that. So we've been working on just some trend analysis that can incorporate multiple years worth of data, and not just see what's the current state, but are people actively adopting source control? Are people actively going away from old versions that are out of support? Because those things are important. I think not just the current state, but are things trending in the direction you want them to trend in? So
Yep.
looking forward to getting some more of that data put together that shows the multi-year analysis
Yep. So while you wait for that, like I said, episode 1 and 2 is available about talking about the results from this year. The third one will be out soon, and then Brad will be recording the teaser episode. Well, sorry, the trends episode uh, coming up here soon. So hopefully we'll have that a little later in the year. So thanks, Michaela, for doing that with CFLI podcast.
Absolutely.
Okay. Find a job. So we've got a few jobs up on the getcfmaljobs.com. So one is a senior ColdFusion developer in London. That is for our newest Patreon sponsor, Tomorrow's Guides. And then we have another position full-time in London as well, and that apparently is a different company. So I guess London's hiring ColdFusion developers this week. So Adam, if you don't want to leave CFML, it sounds like there's people looking for people. But so again, we did have that Patreon sponsored job announcement. So Tomorrow's Guides, fast-paced leader in UK care sector, is looking for 2 different members to join their team. So they've got a senior CF developer for UK only. It's a remote permanent position. They do want at least 3 years minimum experience with ColdFusion, some database design, normalization, ability to write and understand complex queries using MS SQL 2019. They want you to be familiar with Git and have a flexible skill set covering a wide range of development. But they're also looking for an automation test engineer as well. And so if you have some experience with automated testing, tools like Selenium, stuff like that, and tools like API, Postman, Fiddler, etc. So as we mentioned earlier, they got some really good benefits, and they're sounds like they've got some pretty cool events for their company, team nights out, etc. So if you guys are interested, tomorrows.co.uk, you guys can find out more about their jobs on their jobs.cfm page. So, and Adam, you're so welcome for offering you another ColdFusion job. I always like teasing Adam because he just can't get away. He keeps sucking them back in. But yeah, it's. Hold on a second. If you have skills in QA automation engineering in the UK, talk to Adam. So apparently Adam's got a job for someone if you're doing QA automation as well. So, but Ortus also has a job as well. So ortussolutions.com/about-us/careers. So we've got job opportunities there as well, and we have some in Latin America and in the US. So let us know, and hopefully in Spain soon as well. Okay, let's get through. Let's talk about the ForgeBox module of the week. You want to tell us about this one? The author is actually in the chat right now.
Yeah, I'm reading about it right now. I hadn't seen it when it came out. Published on November 7th. Well, that was yesterday.
So
this is the Swagger Redoc UI for ColdBox.
Yep, so David Levin, he was inspired by the CB Swagger UI module that Daniel Garcia wrote. And so basically he decided to do a Swagger Redoc UI version. And so if you go to /redoc once you've got it installed, you'll see a visual representation of your Swagger docs. And it's based on the Redoc one, which is a React-based version.
I feel like I need some screenshots in this README so I know what it means when it says a visual.
Well, you can see right here. Ooh, this README has it. So we need to get some of those files in there, David. But it looks pretty slick, and there is a live demo we can go look at. And it sounds pretty cool. David's been doing a lot of work with Swagger lately. He's been asking questions and talking about things like using refs with all of refs, etc. But if we come down here and look at the pet, so if we want to like find pet by ID, you can see, you've got if you've got a big screen like myself, you can have all the different options. So you can have the menu on the left, and the middle is more the schemas, and then you have the examples, and you can actually run the payloads as different examples. If you want to use XML or JSON, you can do cat, dog.
Maybe David can clarify, is this a tool that generates a static mini site, or is this something that's like at runtime dynamically parsing JSON and outputting this? Like, could you take this and put it on S3 as a static site? What exactly?
Yeah, I believe you could. So, like, we do that with a customer. We have a little site, and the way the CB Swagger one works, the Swagger UI, is it just defaults to the /Swagger implementation, but you can give it different URLs. And so this one here, it's very similar. I haven't installed his version yet, but I'm assuming it's the same. That when you load it up, it'll just load up the Swagger doc that Swagger automatically creates, so the CB Swagger module. But then from there, obviously you can just point it at wherever. So you could put the Redoc one anywhere in your put on S3 and just what we do in one of our clients is we just basically make a link that goes to where our shared Redux server is, and then pass in the file name that we want it to load, and then it'll load it in there. So
So is there like an export button then that actually creates the static files? Because it's looking like this is just a ColdBox module you install, and you're just hitting a ColdBox route that's actually like the server's running, and that's what's generating it.
yeah, so by default, it'll to get the JSON to actually make the docs work, it pulls the Swagger endpoint, and then it generates the JSON file on the fly and then displays it. So I assume with that module there, it's just an easy way to load up and display it without having to worry about installing, a static site somewhere else. So
Right. No, that's fine. It just wasn't my question. My
okay.
question was, does this module generate a static site? Yes or no?
Oh,
And the README doesn't say, and I was hoping if David was still in the chat, he would clarify.
yeah, I don't
So, I
think
mean, I totally understand the runtime parses the JSON file as the
yeah.
page loads, generates it on the fly. I was trying to figure out if this would like spit out a folder of HTML files for me. All right, Scott Steinbeck says no.
No, I mean
All right, well, that's fine. I was just
you
trying to
just
understand what it did.
yeah, you just clone the redoc one and just put your Swagger JSON file in there if that's what you wanted. So it could generate, but it's essentially already there. So yeah,
Interesting. Okay, all right, fair enough. I was just trying to understand what it did.
yeah. So like I said, it's pretty cool, and obviously there's some other ones out there, and so it's one of those things that you can quickly, look at something like the CB Swagger UI or this one and get some different versions because some of them have some cool little features that aren't there. I like the ones where you can put in your do your login and it remembers your keys and then it adds them automatically to all your calls. You can actually test the calls right there in the UI and it does everything through local storage. It's pretty slick. So I haven't tried that one. I will have to play with it. Okay, next up, our VS Code hint, tip, and trick of the week. And this one's an old one, but it's got almost 3 million views now. So I thought it was time to revisit it. I've just started actually using it more. And as a CF Builder user, Brad, I think you would probably like this one.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I'm reading it now.
the Project Manager. So, basically, it just makes it really easy for you to have all your projects inside of VS Code. So, you can add a project. So, you basically, whenever you open a folder, normally you can go to recent open upper folders. Or you can save it as a workspace, and that's kind of annoying. But you have to, open the workspace. But with a Project Manager, you can just sort of save something as a project, and then it can list them all in the side panel, and you can easily switch between projects pretty easily, and you can tag them too, so you can group them. And the cool feature I
So,
liked is that it'll detect all your Git repos and automatically give you a list of them, so you don't even have to make projects. You can
huh,
it'll show you all your Git repos on your site, on your server in a certain folder, and then you can just click on any of them to jump to them. Or
that could be useful. Yeah.
yeah,
It was because the thing I liked about CF Builder was, I'm working in like CommandBox, and I randomly are like, you know what? I want to look at the code on a random file that's part of a test box framework, and I could just directly open it, like without having to go through any steps. But what I liked about VS Code was I'm like, I wish to open this random file in a random folder without creating a stupid project to do it, right? I can just open crap. But I want to find like the happy medium where I can open random stuff easily, but then also get nice management of my you know, normal projects that I work on. I like the idea of it scanning your Git repos.
yeah, so
Um,
here, see,
that's kind of
this,
cool.
this is his project list. So he's got a tag for learning. So all the learning ones are under there. Under personal, you can have different things under VS Code. And then you've got some that don't have a tag, but then underneath it shows all your Git repos within the folder. You tell it, hey, this is where I shove all my Git stuff or my work projects, and it'll
Yeah, the
just
tags are
refresh them.
nice because I have a lot of projects, and some of them are client related, some of them are CommandBox related, some of them
Exactly.
are just
Um,
random related Ortus websites I work on.
Yep,
Um,
and that's exactly what I've been using mine for lately.
yeah,
And you click on it, and if the VS Code window is already open, it just switches to it. And if it's not open, it'll open a new window for you. If you have it set up so you only ever have one VS Code window open, it'll just change to that, but I hate that setting, so hopefully you turn that off. But that means if you've got three open, instead of trying to remember which tab it's in, you can just click this and it'll just take you to it too. And it's got its own little window on the left, so you click Project
yeah,
Manager
that's nice.
and click.
Because right now I'll wind up with like 10 VS Code windows, and then it's like just a bit of a mess just trying to figure out like which VS Code window I want. So I'll have
Yep.
to play with this extension.
Yeah. So, like I said, it's been around for a long time. I think Eric Peterson's the first person that actually recommended it to me, and I've been using it, but I haven't used it as much as I should have, because now I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. Why haven't I been using this more? So, yeah. So that is our VS Code hint, tip, and trick of the week. It's the Project Manager extension, and I will share that in the chat for everybody who's watching live. And we seem to have a lot of people in the chat today. It's good to see. And David said he couldn't live without this module. It's like, well, I couldn't either. I just didn't know how good it was. So started using it more. But yeah, it's really good. And then the tags, it's kind of weird to add tags. So if you edit them in JSON format, go and type something in as a tag, and it becomes a tag. That's kind of how I cheated. But Adam Cameron is installing it now. So yeah.
We're here live with updates from Adam Cameron as he installs this module, folks.
Yeah, VS Code is pretty cool. A lot of cool things there. And if you guys got any other ones that you can't live without, David, let us know. we'll add them to our list, and we'll put them in the VS Code hint, tip, and trick of the week. Remember, we have the video series too, so you can watch all of the ones from this year and don't get as much of us. But without them, our Patreons, we wouldn't be able to make this podcast. So let's thank all our wonderful Patreon supporters and our newest Patreon, Tomorrow's Guides, as they are now a gold Patreon sponsor. So thank you. And remember, if you want to support us, Ortus Solutions, you can go to patreon.com/Ortus Solutions, and doing that, they get a few perks, right, Brad? It's not just giving away money. They do get something for it.
Yes, they get our love and admiration.
Yeah, but is there something they actually want?
Yeah, there's a lot of perks that come with the Patreon supporters. Bronze packages and up get ForgeBox Pro, CFCast subscription. We have the profile badge on the community website so people know how cool you are. We have a private forum access in the community site. We have a private channel on our Box Team Slack for the Patreon supporters. And then we also have live access to streams such as Koding with Kiwi and Friends and the Ortus Software Craftsmanship Book Club. So lots of perks for our Ortus or our Patreon sponsors. Do we have an adjective for the sponsors today?
Not today, unless you think of one.
Oh, have we done illustrious?
No, sounds good. Go with
the
that.
Illustrious Patreon sponsor.
Yep, and so another perk that I just added recently, over time we sometimes branch out and get different hosts for this podcast, and so we've had a couple over time. We've had Ben Adele's come and done it, and then Scott Steinbeck's done it, and I have another one planned coming up in December, so we're going to try and do a Patreon co-host maybe once a month. That's sort of the goal, is to try and get some of you great Patreon supporters here, the people that love to come and join the chat and whatever. So if you guys can get a green screen set up and have a microphone set up, whatever, then we'll start to add some co-hosts. If you guys are curious and you're interested, let us know, and then we can try and add you to the schedule. So it was really cool to have Scott come on, and it was fun with Ben before, and it's good to have more people out there. So don't worry, I'll do the prep. We've got the show notes. Just try and read them before the podcast starts, unlike Brad. But since you're reading away, Brad, we'll let you read out the Patreon names this week, so you can take a deep breath and show us your trumpet lungs.
That's ridiculous. All right, our Illustrion Patreon sponsors: John Wilson from Synaptrix, Jordan Clark, Gary Knight, Mario Rodriguez, Giancarlo Gomez, David Bellinger, Dan Card, Jonathan Perrett, Jeffrey McGee from Sunstar Media, Dean Monder, Nolan Irk, Abdul Raheen, Avil De Bruyne, Joseph Lamry, Don Bellamy, Jan Yannick, Laxma Turahadi, Brian Gidanelli from Haggerty Motorsport, Carl von Stetten, Jeremy Adams, Dieter Lesnicki, Matthew Clemente, Daniel Garcia, Scott Steinbach from Agri Tracking Systems, Ben Liddell, Richard Herbert, Brett DeLine, Kai Koenig, Charlie Earhart, Jason Weigert, Sean Oden, Matthew Darby, Ross Phillips, Edgardo Cabezas, Patrick Flynn, Stephanie Monghi, Kevin Wright, John Wish, Peter Amiri, Kevin Vanis, and John Nesson. Those are our illustrious Patreon supporters. Thank you so much.
Yep, and don't forget our newest member, Tomorrow's Guides, that new gold supporter, and they're looking for workers, so please check out their website. Thanks everybody for joining us. It's been a long one again. I'm sorry, we just keep talking, but lots of good stuff to share. So a lot of great content coming your way, lots of sessions, webinars, and a lot of other great stuff. So thanks everybody for joining us. And Brad, thank you again. And you guys have a great week.
Yep. See you guys online.
Bye. Show notes for this episode can be found at cfmlnews.modernize.io, where you can also subscribe to your favorite podcast player like Spotify or iTunes. We also have the link to YouTube to find more videos just like this. The music used in this podcast is under a royalty-free license from Sound.com and Blue Tree Audio.